Welcome. I'm Carl Bletcher with the Grosse-Ile Police Commission. Seated to my right is Chief Joseph Porcerelli. Seated to my left is Deputy Chief John Strapaniak. In 2014, Grosse-Ile celebrates 100 years of law enforcement. Law enforcement in Grosse-Ile is an involvement between the community and the officers that we have. Grosse-Ile started with 4 constables. Chief Porcerelli, how has Grosse-Ile's police department evolved during your time?
In 1914, Grosse-Ile became a township, and it was at this point that the Grosse-Ile Police Department was formed. Before this, we did have 4 constables, and they were deputized through the Wayne County Sheriff's Department. There's been many changes over the years, but especially in the area of technology. When I became an officer almost 30 years ago, we had problems with our radio system, and some of the older gentlemen that I was working with would tell me this story, that we had a system much different than we have today. To call the police department back then, they didn't have radio communication to the cars. They had 2 telephone poles on Grosse-Ile with red lights on them. The officers would drive by the poles, and if the red light was on, they would know to stop the car, go to the call box, call the station, and get all the info for the next call. Sometimes this would take up to an hour. In today's police department, we strive for a 3-minute or less response rate for all emergency phone calls.
Joe, you're a lifelong resident of Grosse-Ile. What was it like growing up here in the community, and what's it been like in terms of structure and communications for you today?
Yes, Carl, I did grow up on Grosse-Ile and have been a police officer for 30 years. We could not do the style policing that we do without the support of our community. One example of this community policing policy is in 2005 and 2006, we were awarded the Michigan's safest community. And up to 2012, we have always been in the top 5. And once again, we could not do this without the support of the community and the help that they have given us.
John Strapaniak is the deputy chief of the department, and as such, John is responsible for many of the day-to-day operations. John, what's your role in the structure, however?
Carl, my job as the Deputy Chief of the Grosse-Ile Township Police Department is to primarily assist the Chief of Police to provide an overview of the patrol, our detective bureau, and all staffing within the agency that they comply with department policies, rules, and regulations.
John, what is the current structure of the Grosse-Ile Police Department?
Carl, our agency currently is comprised of 24 personnel. We have 17 sworn officers and 7 civilian personnel that work for our agency. Comprised of all of our personnel, we do have an animal control officer. We have our civilian staffing of dispatchers, our patrol division, our detective bureau, and our administrative managers, which is the chief of police, myself, and Lieutenant Robert Bowe. We also have an administrative secretary, Ruth Kalidas.
On behalf of Chief Porcerelli, Deputy Chief John Strapaniak, and the entire Grosse-Ile Police Department, we are proud to present to you the history of your Grosse-Ile Police Department.
In the beginning, there was little crime to speak of on Grosse-Ile. There were 2 main reasons for this. The first reason was that our population was still quite small. The second was Grosse-Ile was still somewhat isolated from the mainland. For a long time, the only way to reach Grosse-Ile was by boat or railroad. The railroad bridge to Grosse-Ile provided the first opportunity for walkers and bicyclists to reach the mainland. This railroad bridge, constructed in 1880, was the first link to the island. Today, the Wayne County Free Bridge stands in its place. The toll bridge was erected in 1913 and the county bridge in 1930. Today, the county bridge serves approximately 22,000 vehicles a day to and from the island. The island is still somewhat sheltered from crime for one simple reason. Now that these 2 bridges can be opened, a fugitive could be virtually trapped on Grosse-Ile unless he or she was to escape by boat or plane. The only protection Grosse-Ile had, up until the time it became a separate township, was by deputies of the Wayne County Sheriff's Office. There was no regular patrolling of the island, and these officers usually would come over from the mainland only when needed. It was in October of 1914 that we officially broke away from Mangwagon Township and formed the Township of Grosse-Ile. An important reason for this step, according to a quotation in the Trenton Times, from a statement by Mr. James Bailey, then supervisor of Mangwagon Township, was that the population began to grow and the citizens of Groseal wanted police protection. About a month later, the first township officers were elected. Among them were our first constables. A constable's main function was to serve papers of the Justice Court, such as warrants and summons. To give these constables power to administer law, they were deputized by the Wayne County Sheriff's Office. These constables were elected by the township citizens and now served as law enforcement officials on Groseal. Many of these constables were later titled police officers. One could say this to be the beginning of the Groseal Police Department. The state constitution and statutes empowered the township board to now maintain law and order by appointing a police department to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the community. They therefore created the Groseal Township Safety Patrol. That was the official name of the police department in those early days, and this remained on the department vehicle registrations for a long time to follow. In those early days, our police department was contained in a small cubicle in the old depot building.
Welcome to the Groseal Township Police Department, circa 1940. I grew up over in West River Road, and sometime during the 1930s, when this became within my bike riding range, I used to come over here in the evening and listen to I Love a Mystery, The Green Hornet, with a nightman. Nightman was Ed Stum, and he became a good friend from Sacred Heart Church, and he would keep this going from the time after dinner time, keep it going until about 10 o'clock at night. 10 o'clock at night, he would go home and go to bed, and from then on, if you needed a policeman, you called Chief Ream or Holden Mayville, or maybe you called Ike Peabody or Stum. And I want you to notice, there is no bulletproof glass. There is no worry about insurgents or violence or anything, because we only had a population of 1,500 to 2,000 people in the 1930s. And we were all hunters and fishermen, and we took care of ourselves. We all had guns. Ed Stum became a friend from church. I'd see him in church on Sunday, and come World War II, we couldn't get ammunition for our rifles. And next thing I know, sometime during Mass, he'd walk over and he'd slip me a small box of 22 shells. And I really got to know the police department through Ed, and through really a pollywog stream. There was a pollywog stream called Fox Creek running through West Shore Golf and Country Club. And this was within my little guys, 8 years old or 6 years old. This was within my walking distance. And I discovered pollywogs in that stream. Okay, pretty soon I was looking at the clubhouse in the wintertime, the present brick building. And I'd walk around and look in the windows. Oh, here's a window open. Remember, I'm 8 years old maybe. Oh, I go in and see what's going on and walk around. Didn't do damage in those days. It never even came into my head. I came home, told my mother what I was doing. She says, wait a minute. She says, I'm going to call Ed. So she gets on the phone and calls Ed Ream. In a half hour, he comes over and gives me a little lecture about private property, and you shouldn't go those kind of places. And he was very much a gentleman. And I enjoyed, my father died when I was 5 years old, so I had a lot of mentors. These guys were part of my mentors, and growing up on Groseal. And the police department as a whole were great people. But Groseal was a very close-knit place, and we knew everybody, and everybody knew us. Great place. Okay, now you're in the clerk's office. The police department is behind my back, and from time to time, Ed Rim, chief of police, had to overflow into the clerk's office, and he had a desk right about where I'm sitting, so it was sort of around the corner. And he would share this with Toots, Aunt Toots, which is Elizabeth Johnson, the Plummer family, and there's still many, many Johnsons left. And coincidentally, they come back to Sacred Heart Cemetery all to be buried because they love the place.
We didn't have our own jail at the time and utilized the Trenton Jail to house our prisoners. In those early days, the Trenton Jail was nothing more than a small building at the west end of the fire department building. It contained a cage with 2 bunks to house the prisoners and doubled as a storage area for extra fire hose. The jail was later moved inside the new police department building.
Okay, if you went into the present police department from Jefferson Avenue, you'd walk straight down that hallway. In the last door on the right was the jail, and essentially what it was a room about 12 by 12 with a steel cage in the middle, and the individual got locked up in that steel cage. Another overflow from the little police department that is behind me was when you got a driver's license. You came in here and you saw the chief of police, which was Ed Ream at that time, and you didn't take a test, you didn't go to driver's school, you didn't do all those things. Mostly is because Ed knew you, and he knew you drove a little bit before you got your license. Okay, got my license when I was 14 years old, and came through the little police department behind me. Ed was standing over there with the chart that you read, all the E's, the bigger and the smaller, and the U's and the A's and whatever they were. And you stood on a line right here. There's the line. And you read the eye chart. And he looked at you and he says, "Hey, you're good to go." He said, "You can see. I know you can drive because I've seen you do it." And he'd go over to Aunt Toots's desk. And remember, Aunt Toots was the township clerk. Go over to Aunt Toots's desk and fill out a driver's license, sign it, and hand it to you. You're gone. That was all there was to it.
Ironically enough, when I turned 16, my father was the township supervisor, so he drove me down to the township hall, and I think he was kind of hesitant about me getting a license because I was going to be the 7th driver in the family. So I think he was going to tell the policeman, give him a hard time, maybe even flunk him, and maybe make him wait a year. So I'm all nervous, and I walk into this, kind of an impressive building, but when you're 16 years old, the old police station, which was on the corner of Parkway and East River. And a police officer came out and he get in the car real sternly, and I thought, oh Lord, I'm going to flunk this for sure. So we walk out and he said, just drive around to Bellevue and come back. He says, the only thing I can tell you is do a lot of driving. That's when you'll become a good driver. So all my fears about flunking and having to wait another year or two to get a driver's license were all for naught, and that police officer could not have been nicer. And I think it was Bill Ferguson who gave me the test. So that was a great experience, and one of my best first memories of that police station. I left with a driver's license, said that I'm now an adult. I went in as a young boy and came out as an adult because now I had the right to drive my car anywhere I wanted to go. My father did not have to sign or anything like that for me. They probably have to do that today, but in those days, you were on your own. The township hall was all-inclusive. It had all the township offices, plus the police department. So the township clerk may have been there, the township treasurer. My dad was the township supervisor, but he was, because Groseal was so small in those days, he only had to go there half a day on Saturdays, and he had a law office downtown. So, and it seemed like he did a lot of his business out of the house. But going down to the township hall was always a pleasure because he seemed like he was the boss because he was the supervisor. And that was kind of a great memory. And the building was kind of impressive in those days because it was our township hall.
We had to pass a driver's training. After we took driver's training, we had to pass the test through his department that he had set up. And all I remember is getting in the car at the depot and hopping in and with Bill Ferguson, and we did a lap around, came back, and I went in. They gave me a temporary license, took my picture, and I said, what is this for? Am I going to jail? No, they laughed.
This photo shows the first official police vehicle owned by the township, a Harley-Davidson motorcycle with Constable Herbert Tucker, Bro, at the controls. It had 4 speeds forward and was equipped with a powerful headlight and a siren. Rumor has it that this motorcycle could reach a speed of 85 miles per hour. In 1928, Groseal Township took delivery of this new police special heavy-duty squad car. It was one of the new gearshift model A Fords. It was actually a touring car with folding top and side curtains and wire wheels. This was one of 2 police cars on the island at the time. The other car was owned by Isaac Peabody, and the township paid him mileage when used. But Ed Ream recalled the police department had a special friend, Mrs. Anna Reinvold. She was bothered about the inability to contact the police car while they were on patrol, and at her own expense installed a police radio in one of the Fords, tuned to the Detroit police radio stations on Belle Isle. Islanders could then call the township office or the county sheriff and reach the cruising island police car through the Belle Isle radio dispatcher.
Well, I grew up on Groseal, and I knew the police chiefs, luckily not because I'd gotten into trouble, but I'd gotten a phone call from Ted Granda, who grew up on Groseal, and apparently he was not the best boy growing up. And Chief Ream was like a Dutch uncle to him, so he would call him in, and Ted said he had a fist like a mallet, and he wouldn't let the boys get away with too much, and he was looking out for the boys growing up on Groseal. And Ted wanted me to write a piece in my column, The Island Eye, about Chief Ream, because he really was very dedicated to his memory, because he said growing up, got into a bit of trouble, and Chief Ream would sit down with him and make sure that he was on the right path. And so he had not a very clean record, but when he joined the Navy after graduating from Groseal High School, the Navy had him going to go into a high-level job, meant a lot of security. And so they wanted to know if he had a clean record. So they sent back to the police department on Groseal, and Ed Ream had said, he found out later, to his assistant, I want you to wipe the slate clean for any of these boys, because he said boys will be boys when they're growing up, but they become men, and they should have a clean slate when they have prospect of a good job. And his record was clean, and he got the job, and so he's always been dedicated to Chief Ream. He kind of looked out for the boys, and he said in his years as police chief, and you know, he was with the police department in many capacities until he became chief, he said through the years he had a lot of boys that he had to speak to, like he did Ted. And he was very pleased that in his career as a police officer, he only so-called lost 2 boys. And there were a lot of boys that went through his hands. And so Ted wanted to pay tribute to his memory of Ed Ream, and so I wrote the little piece for the Island Eye and paid tribute to Ed Ream and his long term as chief of police on Groseal.
When I turned 21, essentially I inherited all my inherited all my father's guns, a shotgun and a couple of pistols. Okay. Ed Ream signed my gun permits, my registration. And that was another nice contact I had with Ed.
In 1936, Holden, Doc Mayville, joined the force, his nickname Doc. Ream and Mayville worked together for many years. Doc Mayville became chief of police upon the retirement of Ed Ream in 1960.
I was a fast driver, and I can remember being outside the USO down on Elba Island, going through the gate, and Doc was directing traffic because during the war the USO was very, very busy, and he put up his hand and I stopped. What do you want me to do? He says, back up, Heinrich. And I backed up, and I had a little bit of a heavy foot, too much, and I hit a tree going backwards. And Doc walks over and he says, Heinrich, I'm gonna get you. You drive too fast. But you know something? He never did, because essentially I was a safe driver.
Doc Mayville came in, and that's when I was in high school. I graduated in 1962, and he was chief then. And there was a little bit of a change in how the department ran things, but not much. You still didn't want to get in trouble with the police because the old standby, call up the old man, and with the fraternity paddle, was not what you wanted to do. But our police department back in those days were very, very hardworking with the kids, and we had a lot of respect for them. We knew them. Well, I don't exactly know how old I was, but I was in my teens, and we were out on the ice, and at that time the ice would freeze almost all the way to Canada. And we were out messing around a little bit on the ice, and probably sipping on some things we shouldn't be when the police saw us and shined their lights on us, and brought us in and said that if they catch us again, they will call our parents, and, oh, by the way, thank you for the beer.
Doc's son, Felix, they had, I think, 6 children, lived up next to what is now the school board building, back in off of East River. And one of them was Felix. Felix was my age, and he was a fellow class in 1946. Okay, we graduated, we went off to war. Felix comes back and tries out being a patrolman, but he didn't like it. So he didn't last long. He resigned and went to something else, but had a fantastic memory. Felix, after a year or two of being a patrolman, could remember everybody's license plate on Groseal and who it belonged to. It was marvelous.
During these early years, law enforcement had another problem to contend with: prohibition. Prohibition in the United States was a national ban on the sale, production, and transportation of alcohol. It was in place from 1920 to 1933. The ban was mandated by the 18th Amendment to the Constitution, and the Volstead Act set down the rules for enforcing the ban. The Volstead Act defined the types of alcoholic beverages that were prohibited. The state of Michigan and the Detroit River played an integral part in the history of national prohibition. From the importation of Canadian beer and liquor to the adventures of the Purple Gang, it was a trying time for law enforcement, and Groseal played an important role. The Purple Gang was one of the local organized groups involved with what was referred to as rum running. The gang ruled an area from Grosse Pointe to Groseal. After 1923, gangs controlled a large percentage of illegal alcohol and acquired huge profits. The Purple Gang became a major supplier to Al Capone and his Chicago empire. The Purple Gang fell in 1929 after many leaders were arrested or murdered. It was estimated that 75% of the illegal alcohol entered the country across the Detroit River. The river spanned 28 miles from Lake Erie to Lake St. Clair and was said to be a smuggler's paradise. Numerous islands dotted the river, providing hiding places for smugglers, and Groseal was one of the popular ones. In February of 1930, during one of the coldest periods of the century, a local paper reported a convoy of 75 automobiles leaving the export docks in Amherstburg, heading for Michigan via Boyce Blank to Groseal. In wintertime, with the Detroit River being frozen, rum runners took their chances driving across the river, often taking lighter cars with smaller engines. Old jalopies, dubbed the Whiskey Six, were used to carry liquor across the ice during these harsh winters. The doors were often removed to aid drivers just in case they had to bail out quickly. While federal authorities handled the bootlegging cases, the Groseal police confiscated large amounts of liquor that had been abandoned. All of this liquor was taken to the home of Mr. Tom Holland, Justice of the Peace at the time. When the bottles were smashed, the liquor would run into a little gully that ran into Mr. Holland's chicken yard. The chickens and ducks would lap it up as fast as it came into the yard. They would become stone drunk and lay around for several hours until they came to. As soon as they came to, they would go right back and start lapping it up all over again. Illegal whiskey was smuggled by the truckload. Huge profits were made on illegal alcohol during this time, and this encouraged crime on a greater scale. Perhaps the best-known robberies on the island occurred around 1930, when a series of breaking and entering cases took place. A few of the places broken into included the Groseal Country Club, Sherwood's Country Club, Dunbar and Sullivan's, and some of the homes at the south end of the island. The loot from these crimes varied from ashtrays and curtains up to items as large as an icebox, a stove, and even a car. The robbers were a gang of bootleggers consisting of 2 women and 7 men who operated between Wyandotte and a cottage they had rented on Groseal. Here we see 2 of the men in front of the old depot being escorted off to jail by police. Eventually, through a tip from a friend of the gang, the officers were able to zero in on them. Upon an investigation, it was found that the cottage that they rented was entirely furnished with stolen goods from Groseal. After each person had identified and taken home his or her belongings, the house was completely empty except for some laundry and a small wooden table. It took 7 months to return all of the stolen goods. Prohibition ended with the ratification of the 21st Amendment, which appealed the 18th Amendment. Prohibition officially ended on December 5th, 1933. The country then seemed ready to move on. The first person to officially hold the title of Chief of Police on Groseal was Ed Ream. Ed was our longest-standing chief and also one of our early constables. He signed on in 1928 and became Chief of Police in 1930. At one time, Ed served as both fire and police chief. He formed the island's volunteer fire department in 1942. Ed ran the police department from the old depot at Groseal Parkway and East River Roads. He was also present when the first 2-way radios were installed to communicate with the patrol car on the road. He was highly respected by both young and old members of the community and served up until 1960, when he turned the reins over to his assistant, Holden Mayfield. Holden, known as Doc Mayville, was also one of the early constables and worked with Ed Ream for many years. Doc signed on with the department in 1936. Prior to becoming chief, he was part of a team consisting of Ed Ream, Chris Sherwood, Ernest Grundy, and himself. Mayville also attended the Michigan State Police Training School at East Lansing, and Doc served many years with the department, carried on as chief of police until 1963. Following Holden Mayville as chief of police was James Hagan. Hagan moved to Michigan with his family in 1925. While attending Southwestern High School in Detroit, he was awarded Detroit's Most Outstanding Athlete Award. James attended the University of Alabama and played football with Paul Bear Bryant, one of the most heralded coaches in college football history. Hagan also played minor league baseball with the New York Yankees in 1934. He returned with his wife to Groseal in the early 40s and joined the Groseal Police Force. He rose through the ranks to become Chief of Police in 1963 and remained in that position until 1971. During the years of 1971 through 1974, the Chief of Police position was held by Russell Kohler. Prior to coming to Groseal, Russell was Superintendent of Detroit's Traffic Safety, Accident Prevention, and Harbor Master Bureaus. Chief Kohler attended the Northwestern University Police School and trained with the Detroit Riot Control Team. After his release from the military, Pat joined the Michigan State Police. He had a long and successful career in law enforcement and retired in 1974 from the Michigan State Police Department. During that time, he was appointed Chief of Police for Groseal. Pat was an avid voter and served as Commodore of the Groseal Yacht Club in 1984. Upon leaving the police department, Pat and his family then moved to Florida. Stevens, as a Groseal resident since 1969, was a 10-year veteran of the Fairborn, Ohio Department before moving to Groseal. Maurice attended training programs at Eastern Michigan University and mid-management symposium sponsored by the Michigan Association of Police Chiefs. He joined the department in 1972 and served as Chief of Police from 1991 to 1996. Bill began his career with the Groseal Police Department in 1977 and was appointed Chief of Police in 1996. He is a lifelong resident of the island and also served as a volunteer firefighter. Bill also served as team leader of the Downriver Special Weapons and Tactics Team. He also served on the Downriver Mutual Aid Dive Team. In addition to his many commendations, Bill received the Kiwanis Club Award of Honor in 2009. This award recognizes valor, integrity, heroism, bravery, and commitment. Joe began his career with the Groseal Police Department as patrolman in 1985. He is a graduate of the Groseal High School and has a bachelor's degree from Eastern Michigan University in Law Enforcement Management and Technology. He is also a graduate of EMU's Staff and Command School and attended the FBI Executive Management School. During his career, Joe has received many life-saving awards and departmental commendations. He was appointed Chief of Police in 2009 and resides in that position today.
Hello, my name is Joe Porcerelli. I was appointed Chief of Police in 2009. During that time, our management team made a complete transition. John Straponiak was appointed Deputy Chief. Robert Bowe was promoted to Lieutenant. This all came about with the retirement of former Chief Bill Barron and Deputy Chief Al Scrocky. One of our goals at the Groseal Police Department is to focus on continuous improvement. To do this, we put a great emphasis on utilizing new technology wherever possible. Our vehicles are equipped with the latest safety and communication equipment. We are dedicated to giving our residents and our officers the very best available. I'd like to bring you into the dispatch center first. This is where everything begins. I'd like to show you all of our equipment. This is Monica, our dispatcher. The equipment that we have here, as you can see, is a multi-screen for our lean, for our dispatching. This piece of equipment right here is for our new radio system that'll be going into this facility next month. We dispatch fire, police, animal control, and rescue from this office. Look behind us here. This is our license plate recognition system. This is what we have on the county bridge. Every vehicle that goes over, we capture the plate and it's run through NCIC to see if the vehicle's stolen or if there's any felony warrants for the driver. And we can use this piece of equipment also if we're looking for a vehicle. We can type it into the system and see if it's gone over or if we're looking for it. The 911 system, which is right here, any call that comes to the Groseal Police Department via 911 or the 676-7100 comes right here into dispatch, and then our dispatcher disseminates the call to the correct agency. As you can see above her head here are all our security cameras around the building. We have cameras on the inside and the outside area, including the fire department area. Now I'd like to take you into our jail and booking area. Our cells can hold up to 9 people. We have 3 cells, and we have one special cell here that is for females only, and they have complete privacy if they're in here. We can house men and women at the same time, but we have to put the female in here, and again, she would have complete privacy. No one can see in and no one can see out. We obviously cannot hold juveniles and adults in the same facility. I'd like to bring you back here is where we book our prisoners when they come in. We bring the prisoners right here on our bench. This is our data master for our OWI arrests. We do our fingerprinting, our picturing, and any booking process that we have to do with each and every prisoner. All prisoners are taped audio and video while they're in here.
And this is the Groseal police car of today. This is a brand new Dodge Charger. It comes equipped with the police pursuit package. It has a 300 horsepower engine, high-speed tires, heavy-duty brakes, and all of the safety amenities necessary for us to do our job. With me today is Detective Lieutenant Robert Bowe. Bob is our information technology specialist. He is responsible for ordering and servicing technical equipment in our department.
Well, what I'll show you first is the infrared that we have installed on the computer here. This is very helpful in finding lost children or lost people in the woods. It's also helpful for finding suspects when they take off running. As you can see, someone walking down the street, you can see them plain and clear that they're walking there. Makes it easier for us to see at night. Also makes it easier for us to see into the woods. Next thing on the computer, then actually the computer is basically the brain of the electronics in the car. The computer runs all of the stuff in the car except for the lights and siren and the radio and that type of stuff. Also in the computer is software for ticket management. With this is what you don't want to see. We can issue a ticket for any traffic violation, even some misdemeanor offenses. The next piece of software I'll show you is our in-house software. This connects us to our dispatch. This gives us information on people. We can run them through and we can see who's in the system. Also in the car, we've got an automatic reader for your driver's license. If you've ever looked at the back of your driver's license and seen the black strip, that black strip swipes through here and we can automatically run your driver's license through to see who you are or if you're actually who you're telling us you are. Some of the other equipment in the car, the police two-way radio. Mr. Zalasko mentioned the original two-way radio went to, I think it was Detroit. The original radio, you had to go through a separate dispatcher. Our radio connects directly to our dispatch. So we can pick up the mic, talk to the dispatch, and she'll talk right back to us and let us know what's going on. Also in the car is equipped with a radar. This radar is a moving radar and stationary radar. There's been some questions about whether or not radar can be shot in a moving car. Yes, it can. What the radar does is it picks up moving vehicles as the car is moving, and it picks up the speed of the patrol car and compares the two together and gives us the speed of the target car that we're looking at. And then the last thing that I've got down here is a printer for the tickets. It's a thermal imaging printer. So it prints out on a thermal ticket, a piece of paper, your ticket, and that ticket automatically gets sent to the court. So the court has that information just when we're done with it. We hit print, the court gets the information.
And this is the Groseal motorcycle of today. Yes, it's still a Harley-Davidson, but it's capable of doing much more than 85 miles an hour. It has a twin overhead cam engine, puts out over 100 foot-pounds of torque, and has all the amenities on it that we need to ensure safety in our community. With me today is Officer Todd Brozek. Officer Brozek is one of our motor officers, and he will take us through and explain some of the features on the motorcycle to you.
We'll start from the back, and if you see this right here, if you're looking at this is actually a radar antenna. We have one here, and we also have one up in the front that I'll get to when we walk to the front of the bike, or the motor as we call it. The box here, most people don't know what's inside. It's backup power. So in case we have the accessories running on here, that it doesn't run out of power, so when we go to start it, it'll start again. Also houses lighting, the emergency lighting, the strobes. I'll open it up, and of course we have a flashlight, which is very important, and our communications, which is all wireless. So this is a housing for most of it's basically an electronics housing, because there's not a lot of room on the motorcycle to put it to store it at. Saddlebags are on both sides. That's just for storage. We put our equipment in there. Walking around to the front here, or actually up on the cluster panel or the fairing. As you can see, all of the equipment on here, most of it's like on your standard Harley, but some of the differences, of course, the radar. This is the controller, the control head. This right here, SETCOM. We talked about the wireless mics. This is the push to talk. Your SETCOM has a really nice option. It's all wireless, so if I need to talk to dispatch or vice versa, all I do is I hit this button while I'm underway. It has noise canceling and from the wind, and she can hear me loud and clear, as to where the olden days when we used to work off of our regular mics, they couldn't understand us and we had to pull off to the side of the road. In the police car, same thing, we have our loudspeaker. Or if we need to get somebody's attention from a distance or a large crowd, we could use this, which goes through this siren. Serves as two purposes, the loudspeaker and the siren. Everything on here is within thumb's distance, where I can control it, where I keep my hands on the steering wheel or on the grips. You know, so my clutch and my brake, clutch being that side, brake being that side. And it's a safety issue. You want everything within a reasonable or a quick distance where I can control everything. I can control the radar from here just using my thumb, and I can talk to dispatch and respond pressing that button. This is the other radar antenna I was talking about. That gives me the option of doing speed measurement coming at me from the direction of in front and also from behind. The importance of the lighting, although the lighting is very subdued, you really can't tell. There's a lot of emergency lighting on here, but if you let me turn this on, one of the issues of riding a motorcycle, because it's a smaller unit, smaller vehicle or patrol unit, is you want it visible from 360 degrees. And the reason being is anybody coming from any direction is going to be able to see this, and it gets your attention. It says, hey, there's an emergency vehicle on the side of the road. One important thing about the Harley and using it during the warmer months, and actually we use it quite often, we'll use it all the way into November and get it out as early as April, is this is more versatile as far as getting into places that a car can't get. We can go around the schools, we can get behind businesses, we get into many more places, we can go down trails. The response of this is much different than a police vehicle because of its size, its maneuverability, and the places that it can fit that a police car cannot.
As we all know, our island has been somewhat separated from the mainland. Therefore, we have to be prepared to address our own needs. One of these areas is animal control. Animal control is the responsibility of the Grosse Ile Police Department. Living in this country-like environment, we have to address not only domestic animals, but also wild animals. This becomes the responsibility of our ACO, Julie Cordes. We have an excellent animal shelter at the Centennial Farm and the support of a wonderful volunteer group, Tails. As an island in the middle of the Detroit River, it also becomes necessary to address many issues involving the surrounding water. We are an intricate part of the Downriver Dive Team, led by our own officer Todd Brozek, who is currently the dive commander. We contend with everything from teaching water safety to removing vehicles from the river. I can't emphasize enough the importance of monitoring substance abuse. Our aggressive narcotics program is twofold. Our canine unit is second to none. The dog has been an invaluable tool in apprehending drug offenders as well as confiscating contraband. In addition to acting on drugs, we also promote prevention. We do this through our DARE program, Drug Abuse Resistance Education. This program is taught by our own youth officer, Detective Ken Pellin. I feel it very important to teach the kids how to deal with peer pressure and learn to say no to drugs. Groseal has become a show place with so many interesting and beautiful things to see. We also host many events, especially during the summer months. This means increased volumes of people. Public safety is always our main concern. When additional manpower is required, our police reserve unit becomes a valuable asset. We presently have 12 trained reserve officers. These officers administer everything from directing traffic to crowd control. As I stated, public safety is always the top of our list. We are very fortunate to have a wonderful group of experienced and dedicated men and women serving this department. To protect and serve is not only a creed, it is a priority with our people. Our officers have performed everything from school crossings to saving someone's dog on the ice to saving a person's life.
As a township, Groseal government functions somewhat different from that of a city. Each department or division is represented by a commission or a committee, and the police department is one of those commissions.
The Groseal Police Commission is a civilian oversight board. That means we act as a liaison between the department and the community, and between the department and the township board. The first commission was organized in January of 1966. Its initial task was to review and set up a budget for the department operations that year. We still continue to do that and much, much more. Currently, the department operations include a chief, deputy chief, lieutenant, 17 sworn and certified officers, 5 dispatchers, animal control, and a secretary. We're responsible for handling grievances that come up as a result of disputes regarding the contract or disciplinary matters. The Police Commission is also involved in still scheduling and setting the budget. We have an oversight for the animal control officer. The commission is also involved in handling complaints from the community, handling complaints about officers, and as well as handling issues involving departmental affairs with other departments, other communities, training, education, and management of services.
Although this documentary is about the Groseal Police Department, we'd like to take this opportunity to compliment the other part of our public safety team, Fire Chief Duncan Murdoch and Fire Marshal Russell Boudry, and their outstanding volunteer fire department. Our island and its public safety department have grown together in harmony over the years. Public safety was then, and is today, an important part to the growth of this community. As our island evolved, so did our police department. I'm very proud to serve on the Groseal Police Commission. I'm also very proud of the 24 dedicated men and women that serve this police department. As I've said before, they all wear a badge, and on that badge it says police, to protect and serve, something they take very seriously. But that badge also says Groseal, and I can assure you that each and every one of them wears that with a lot of pride. It's often said that a community is only as strong as the police department that serves it. Here at the Groseal Police Department, we understand that to go both ways. A police department is only as strong as the community that supports it. On behalf of the Groseal Police Department and the Commission, we'd like to take this time to thank you for your support. Together, we can promote, preserve, and protect this wonderful place we live, a special place we call Groseal. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please let us know. We'd love to show you more. Bob Zalasko reporting from your police department, Groseal, Michigan.